In the world of Asian entertainment, reputations can shatter overnight. One accusation, one headline, or one reckless choice can transform a star from beloved idol to public enemy. Zhao Lusi and Darren Wang learned this truth in very different ways. She was nearly destroyed by a smear campaign built on lies, while he unraveled under the weight of his own deceit and violence. Their stories unfold like two sides of the same coin, one of resilience and survival, the other of arrogance and downfall. Stay with us as we uncover both scandals and subscribe for more stories behind the spotlight. Zhao Lusi's story begins as one of those rare tales that seem almost too good to be true. In an industry saturated with carefully manufactured images and polished stars, she broke through with a kind of raw authenticity that audiences craved. Born in 1998, she carried an approachable warmth that made her instantly relatable. Yet she had a spark of independence that set her apart from the crowd. Casting directors quickly realized she was perfect for roles that demanded not only sweetness, but also resilience. Viewers saw in her a young woman who could be gentle yet strong, ordinary yet captivating. By her mid-20s, she was already leading historical and romantic dramas that pulled in millions of views, cementing her as one of the brightest stars of her generation. Her fame stretched far beyond China, carried by streaming platforms and fan communities that adored her genuine charm. That same sense of authenticity became a defining part of her public persona. Unlike many of her peers, she was not viewed as distant or untouchable. Fans believed her kindness extended beyond the screen into real life, and she often chose to associate her name with projects that reflected those values. One such project was a rural development initiative in Shanxi province. The region had been devastated by hailstorms that destroyed crops, leaving countless farmers facing financial ruin. Zhao's team worked alongside local officials to promote agricultural products, hoping her celebrity status would draw attention to the crisis. As part of that effort, her company was given the honorary designation of Ambassador Supporting Farmers, a symbolic recognition intended to boost morale and encourage consumers to buy local produce. For Zhao, it was an opportunity to use her platform for something that mattered, aligning her growing stardom with a cause rooted in compassion. At first, the gesture was met with gratitude and praise. Fans applauded her for caring about ordinary people, for not letting fame blind her to the struggles of the rural poor. Farmers who benefited from the publicity expressed their thanks, saying her involvement helped move products that otherwise might have rotted in fields. The story fits seamlessly into the narrative that Zhao had built, a young actress who had not forgotten her roots, who understood the power of celebrity and used it responsibly. For a time, it seemed like a perfect example of how fame and social good could intersect. But the world of Chinese entertainment is a fiercely competitive arena, where rivals are constantly searching for weaknesses to exploit. Zhao's meteoric rise placed her under a harsh spotlight. Every role, every endorsement, every public appearance became a point of comparison with other rising stars, particularly Esther Yu, another actress of her generation, whose career often ran parallel to Zhao's. Their fandoms clashed regularly online, trading accusations and fueling narratives of rivalry. Entertainment outlets happily amplified these comparisons, framing them as two sides of a battle for dominance among the post-95 actresses. It was in this charged atmosphere that Zhao's honorary ambassador title quietly transformed from a harmless recognition into a weapon that could be used against her. At first, the doubts surfaced quietly. Whispers in comment sections and gossip forums. Was the title legitimate? Did she exaggerate her involvement for publicity? Critics claimed it was nothing more than self-promotion dressed up as charity. For weeks, the chatter simmered, part of the endless noise that surrounds celebrities. But then, in August 2024, it erupted. Qianjiang Video, a media outlet with a significant following in entertainment reporting, published a damning report claiming Zhao had used a forged government seal to claim the ambassador title. The accusation was explosive. Forging an official seal in China is not just unethical. It is considered a serious crime. Within hours, the story spread across social media like wildfire, with Zhao's name climbing to the top of trending charts on Weibo. By the end of the day, hundreds of millions of users had read about the alleged forgery. The implications were devastating. Zhao had built her brand on sincerity and relatability. The accusation painted her as manipulative and deceitful, someone willing to commit fraud for personal gain. Fans rushed to her defense, pointing out that the recognition had been awarded to her company, not her personally, but nuance rarely survives in the rush of online outrage. In the court of public opinion, the details mattered less than the headline. Zhao was accused of dishonesty, and the scandal took on a life of its own. Her attempts to explain the situation did little to calm the storm. When she clarified that the title had been meant for her company, critics accused her of shifting blame. The more she tried to speak, the more hostile the response became. In a matter of days, she went from one of the most celebrated young actresses in China to a symbol of arrogance and fraud. The attacks grew relentless. Social media users mocked her charity work, claiming it was nothing more than a facade. Detractors accused her of disrespecting state authority. Even those who had previously been neutral began to doubt her sincerity. The pressure became unbearable. On August 13th, Zhao made the shocking decision to delete her Weibo account entirely. For years, it had been her main link to her millions of fans, a place where she could share updates and connect directly with supporters. Its sudden disappearance felt like a desperate cry for relief. To her loyal followers, it was a heartbreaking signal of how deeply the accusations had wounded her. To her critics, it was confirmation that she had something to hide. Silence, in the whirlwind of speculation, only fanned the flames further. The scandal exposed the dark underbelly of the entertainment world. It showed how rivalries could become proxy wars between agencies, with media outlets amplifying one side at the expense of another. Observers quickly noticed that Chanjiang Video had a pattern of promoting Esther Yu while publishing negative stories about Zhao, fueling rumors that Esther's agency was behind the smear. No evidence was ever presented, but the perception alone was enough to convince many fans that Zhao had been deliberately targeted. The frenzy was not just about a forged seal. It was about power, influence, and manipulation in an industry where fame can collapse in an instant. For Zhao, the situation seemed almost hopeless. She had no control over the narrative. Every move she made was twisted, every word interpreted against her. Her image, once built on authenticity, was being rewritten in real time into something unrecognizable. It was not just her career at stake, but her identity as a public figure. In the eyes of millions, she was no longer the bright, relatable star who cared for farmers, but a symbol of everything shallow and deceitful about celebrity culture. Yet, just as quickly as the scandal rose, the truth emerged. Within 24 hours of the initial accusation, authorities verified the seal and confirmed it was authentic. Zhao had done nothing wrong. The revelation should have ended the controversy, but by then, the damage was already profound. The same internet that had labeled her a fraud was slow to acknowledge her innocence. Still, voices began to shift. Farmers in Shanxi spoke out in her defense, explaining how her involvement had genuinely helped their livelihoods. Mainstream media picked up these accounts, reframing Zhao as a victim rather than a perpetrator. Public sympathy grew, and she began to be seen not as someone who forged her way to recognition, but as someone who had been unfairly targeted. The vindication was bittersweet. Though cleared of wrongdoing, Zhao had lost her Weibo presence, and much of the direct communication with fans that had been central to her career. Endorsement deals and projects had already been put under review. The shadow of the scandal lingered, even as the facts exonerated her. But for many, her survival through the storm became proof of her resilience. Instead of collapsing under the weight of false accusations, she endured, emerging with scars, but also with the respect of those who saw her as a symbol of perseverance in the face of ruthless industry politics. Her ordeal became more than just a celebrity story. It was a cautionary tale about how fragile reputations can be in the digital age, how easily perception can be manipulated, and how quickly admiration can turn into condemnation. Zhao Lusi went from heroine to villain to vindicated survivor in the span of days. Her case illustrated not only the cruelty of online culture, but also the strength it takes to withstand it. For Zhao, the scandal was not the end, but a defining chapter, one that revealed both the darkest and the most supportive sides of fame. Darren Wang's story begins in sharp contrast to Zhao Lusi's. Where her rise was defined by an aura of authenticity and sweetness, his was built on charisma, rebellion, and a kind of dangerous charm that made him irresistible to audiences. From the moment he burst onto the scene in the 2015 romantic film Our Times, he seemed destined for stardom. His portrayal of a slick-haired, cocky high school bad boy captured the imagination of young viewers across Asia. Darren was not just another polished idol. He carried an edge, a sense that he was unpredictable, and that made him stand out in an industry often accused of churning out cookie-cutter stars. Directors wanted his intensity, brands wanted his image, and fans wanted to believe in the tough but lovable character he embodied. For years, it worked. He became one of Taiwan's most recognizable actors and a face increasingly welcomed in China's lucrative entertainment market. But along with the fame came expectations, and one of the biggest in Taiwan is military service. Every man is required to serve, and skipping out is not only illegal, but deeply frowned upon by society. It is seen as an essential duty tied to fairness, unity, and national identity. The public tends to be unforgiving when a celebrity appears to dodge it. Darren was no exception. His bad boy image made people watch him more closely, waiting to see if he would prove his toughness off-screen by stepping into uniform like ordinary citizens. For years, he did not. As time went on and other actors his age completed their service, Darren remained absent from military ranks. Rumors began to swirl. Some claimed he was using medical excuses to delay enlistment. Others suspected he was pulling strings behind the scenes, using fame and money to protect himself from obligations. At first, it was dismissed as gossip, but with each year that passed, the whispers grew louder. By the early 2000s and 20s, the conversation around military service scandals had already damaged several celebrities, so the public mood was harsh and uncompromising. Each time Darren appeared in a new film or graced another magazine cover, critics noted the glaring absence of his service record. The contrast between his on-screen roles, bold, fearless, rebellious, and his off-screen avoidance of duty, became a nagging contradiction. Some fans remained loyal, eager to defend him, but others grew frustrated. His silence did not help. Darren never directly addressed the issue, and that silence was interpreted by many as arrogance. Perhaps he thought the problem would fade away if ignored. But instead, it festered until it became impossible to avoid. The breaking point came in February 2025. News broke that Darren had been formally arrested for forging medical documents to evade mandatory service. What had been whispers in gossip columns turned into a full-scale scandal, backed by legal charges. Prosecutors accused him of deliberately fabricating health records to obtain exemptions, a calculated attempt to escape his civic duty. The story exploded in Taiwan, dominating headlines and sparking outrage. Ordinary citizens who had dutifully sent their sons to serve in the military watched in anger as one of the country's most famous actors was accused of trying to cheat the system. The betrayal stung deeply. Darren had built his reputation on playing roles that projected toughness and courage. Now, in the eyes of the public, he was revealed as someone unwilling to live up to the very values he sold on screen. Critics pounced on the hypocrisy. Media outlets dissected every detail of the allegations, showing how his timeline of supposed health issues conveniently aligned with filming schedules and overseas promotions. Experts explained the seriousness of document forgery in the context of conscription, making it clear he could face real jail time. For many, this was not just about Darren, but about what he represented: privilege, entitlement, and the belief that wealth or fame could buy immunity from obligations that ordinary people had no choice but to face. Public opinion shifted almost overnight. Fans who once idolized him began to question their loyalty, while critics who had long suspected him felt vindicated. On social media, hashtags calling for accountability trended for days. The Taiwanese government, wary of being perceived as lenient, emphasized that military service was non-negotiable and that no one was above the law. Darren's arrest became more than a celebrity scandal. It was a cultural flashpoint that touched on national pride, fairness, and the resentment ordinary people feel toward elites who believe they can bend the rules. As the scandal unfolded, Darren's career collapsed in real time. Studios that had invested heavily in his projects suddenly found themselves reconsidering. Insurance companies questioned contracts, and promotional campaigns quietly began to remove his face. His cross-border career in China, once flourishing, was thrown into jeopardy. Chinese audiences are notoriously unforgiving when celebrities are caught in personal misconduct, and Darren's case was both public and severe. The image of a rebellious leading man who could draw box office numbers was replaced with the portrait of a dishonest star who had crossed a cultural red line. For Darren himself, the fallout was devastating. Friends and colleagues described him as withdrawn, overwhelmed by the sudden implosion of his carefully cultivated image. He had always been conscious of how he was perceived, and now the foundation of that perception had been ripped away. What was once seen as his daring spirit was recast as arrogance. His edge, once appealing, now looked like a mask for entitlement. Every story about his temper or demanding nature suddenly took on a darker context. The scandal could have ended there, with Darren facing punishment for forgery and a possible chance at rebuilding years later. But the situation grew even darker when investigators combed through his personal devices during the forgery probe. They discovered evidence linking him to a violent assault that had taken place months earlier at Taoyuan International Airport. According to reports, the incident had begun over something trivial. Darren allegedly felt the car arranged for him was beneath his standards. Instead of addressing the issue calmly, investigators claimed he ordered an associate to teach the driver a lesson. The result was a brutal assault in a public place, leaving the driver seriously injured. The revelation was catastrophic. Being accused of forgery had already destroyed much of his credibility, but being tied to orchestrating a violent attack pushed the scandal into an entirely new territory. The public was horrified. The image of a glamorous star using his influence to punish someone over a luxury car choice was almost too outrageous to believe. Yet the evidence uncovered painted him as the instigator. Media outlets seized on the details, framing him as the embodiment of celebrity excess gone unchecked. Cultural commentators pointed out that his behavior reflected the worst stereotypes of stars shielded from accountability, surrounded by yes men and consumed by ego. For Darren's career, this was the point of no return. While forgery might have been survivable with enough time and contrition, being associated with violence destroyed any illusions of redemption. Studios canceled projects, brands cut ties, and fellow actors publicly distanced themselves to protect their own reputations. His name, once an asset, had become toxic. The international opportunities he had fought to secure evaporated. Within weeks, he went from being a leading man with global potential to a pariah. The scandal became a cautionary tale in Taiwan and beyond. Forging documents challenged the nation's sense of fairness, but ordering a violent assault suggested a complete abuse of power. Together, the two scandals painted Darren not as a flawed star, but as someone who believed he was above the law. In a society that values accountability and equality, the backlash was unforgiving. For the public, Darren's downfall was not just entertainment news. It was a moral lesson about the dangers of unchecked privilege. By the time the dust settled, Darren's image was shattered beyond repair. He was no longer remembered for the rebellious charm that once made him a household name, but for the arrogance and recklessness that destroyed him. His trajectory, once filled with promise, had collapsed under the weight of choices that spoke louder than any role he had played on screen. What began as a story of stardom ended as a parable of downfall, leaving behind a legacy of disgrace where glory once seemed certain. The contrast between Zhao Lusi and Darren Wang could not be more striking. Both were young stars at the height of their fame. Both found themselves engulfed in scandals that spread like wildfire across social media, and both watched their reputations collapse in real time. Yet, while one emerged scarred but vindicated, the other was consumed entirely by the consequences of his own actions. Zhao's ordeal was born out of manipulation. What began as a charitable gesture for struggling farmers was twisted into a national scandal through a smear campaign that accused her of forging a government seal. For a moment, it seemed her career was finished, her image destroyed, but the truth prevailed. Authorities confirmed her innocence. Farmers spoke out in her defense, and public perception shifted. Though the experience left her bruised and wary, she survived with her dignity intact. The scars of the scandal remain, but her story is remembered as an example of how resilience and authenticity can weather even the harshest storm. Darren's downfall tells the opposite tale. His scandal was not manufactured by rivals, but fueled by his own choices. Forging documents to avoid military service struck at the core of Taiwan's values, and being tied to a violent assault revealed a dangerous abuse of power. His image as a rebellious heartthrob collapsed under the weight of hypocrisy and arrogance, leaving him abandoned by fans, studios, and brands. There was no vindication waiting for him, only disgrace. Together, their stories reveal the fragile balance of fame in the Chinese-speaking entertainment world. Perception is everything. Zhao was nearly destroyed by lies, yet ultimately redeemed by truth, while Darren proved that even the brightest stars cannot escape when their own actions betray the trust of the public. Zhao Lusi and Darren Wang remind us how fragile fame truly is. For Zhao, the storm revealed the power of truth, proving that even when lies dominate the headlines, resilience can restore what was nearly lost. For Darren, the scandal showed how arrogance and abuse of privilege can erase everything in an instant. One star walked away scarred but stronger, while the other vanished into disgrace. Their journeys are cautionary tales for an unforgiving industry, where perception is everything. If you want to dive deeper into more scandals the world won't forget, make sure to subscribe and never miss a story.